ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch. This is Policy Talks, and it's produced each month by the Williamson Inc., our Chamber of Commerce here in Williamson County. And we are glad to have a bright-eyed crowd here at Columbia State this morning. Hope to have a great discussion about all the things going on downtown on Capitol Hill. And well, we won't get to all of them, I will say that, but we'll try to get to the most important ones if we can. Got a great panel with us this morning, but I also wanted to thank, I'm skipping around a little bit, my usual routine, but welcome the watchers there on Channel 3 TV, on the audience on WKM, and just appreciate everybody tuning in and listening to what we have to say. We're going to try to have a respectful, meaningful conversation about the issues this morning, and we look forward to having that. Our panelists this morning, in order of, I think, seniority, Senator Jack Johnson, our majority leader for the state of Tennessee. Glad to have you with us, Jack. Dr. Joy Hensley from Hohenwald, and representing the 28th district down in Marshall, Murray, and the lower end of Williamson County, and I think one or two other counties. Sam Whitson, I think you're number 3 on the seniority list, representing District 65 here in the Franklin area. And I think, Todd, you're next on the seniority list. Senator Todd, or excuse me, Representative Todd Warner. Almost gave you a promotion there.
You did. I'll take a promotion any day.
Todd represents the 92nd district in, again, the lower end of Williamson County and Marshall County. And then we have Representative Gino Bolzo and Representative Jake McCalman. I think y'all both are equal in seniority. And Gino with the 61st district, and Jake with the 63rd, I believe. So should have lots of meaningful information up here that we hope to harvest as we go through the hour this morning. I'm going to save the best for last. I know a lot of people want to talk about vouchers and the education savings account, so we're going to save that to last and try to cover a lot of the other things, because there's many other things going on in Nashville that some of which we hadn't even heard about through the media. And I want to give our panelists an opportunity to tell us a little bit about that. I think yesterday the Senate passed a $1.9 billion bill that repeals portions of the franchise and excise tax. I think it's a $400 million a year I guess, tax cut for the business community. Jack, you were in the middle of that discussion. Tell us as much as you can about why we're doing that and what that's going to change for the business community.
Sure, happy to. Good morning, everyone. And I think this is the first time we've had the entire delegation here, I think. So this is exciting. It's great to be here with all my colleagues. So the franchise tax issue, we talked about it a little bit, I think, last month, but effectively, we've had a tax on our books relative to businesses and how businesses are taxed. We have a franchise tax and an excise tax, so you sometimes hear F&E or franchise excise. This is specifically on the franchise tax portion of our statute. This tax was passed in 1935. It's been on the books in Tennessee since 1935, about 90 years. And it gets fairly technical in terms of how businesses can choose to apply this tax. The businesses have an option. There's a property component based on how much property you own in Tennessee, and then there's a gross revenue portion. I'm not an accountant, so that's about as much into the details as I'm going to go. But in 2016, the United States Supreme Court came down with a decision relative to the state of Maryland, because they had a similar tax, and they deemed their tax unconstitutional. So Maryland had to go in and fix it and take care of some things. Well, we obviously looked at our tax, and our Department of Revenue folks did at that time, and the Attorney General, and made the ultimate decision that our tax was fine. It withstood the constitutional scrutiny that had been applied to Maryland. Well, back last fall, we got contacted by a law firm out of New York that had put together a group of about 90 different companies, and they had taken a look at this tax, and they approached it from a different legal argument and basically reached out and said, we think you may have a constitutional issue with this tax. So after a lot of review and a lot of attorneys doing a deep dive on it, the governor made the decision that they may be right and we need to fix this. And let's just go ahead and make the fix so we don't have this hanging over our heads. We don't have the potential litigation that could possibly come. We've not been sued. We've not even been threatened with a lawsuit. It's just basically it was brought to our attention that we might have an issue. So the governor decided to fix it. It's about a $400 million tax cut for about 100,000 businesses in Tennessee. We like cutting taxes in Tennessee. We're already the lowest tax state in the nation and the least indebted state in the nation. It will make us even more competitive on the business front. So our chamber friends out there have been active, been working with the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce, NFIB on this, and it's a good thing. The unfortunate part of it is, though, we must be prepared. Our statute provides for a 3-year statute of limitations, and so we need to be prepared for people to come and ask for refunds on this, and if they make the claim that the tax was unconstitutional. So we're going to set aside about $1.5 billion into a fund for potential refunds. It may not be that much, but we want to be prepared for that in the event that companies come and ask for the refund. So good news is it's a big tax cut. It's going to make us even more competitive from an economic development standpoint here in the state of Tennessee, and that's a good thing. I'm not crazy. I don't think any of us are crazy about setting aside $1.5 billion for potential refunds, but that's what our statute already calls for, and so we need to be prepared for that.
I think of the 25 Republicans that voted for that bill, 16 of you had potential conflicts of interest. They're declared something. I don't remember the
Rule
term.
13 is what we call it.
And I think you and Senator Hensley both made that declaration. Is that right?
I don't think I did, but I don't pay F&E taxes. I'm a physician in my other life, so just a sole proprietorship, so they don't pay F&E taxes. But I think I did declare Rule 13 just to be sure.
Can I explain that?
Yeah.
See, maybe some people say, "What are you talking about?" We have a Senate rule that if we're considering anything that could potentially benefit us in any kind of way, we have to declare that. And I do pay franchise and excise tax. I don't think I'm going to be entitled to a refund. I've asked my accountant, and he said, "Sorry, Jack, no, you don't get any of this." So I'm not going to benefit from it prospectively or retrospectively, but I do own businesses, and to be on the safe side, I did declare Rule 13.
All I was wanting to know is how it's going to affect the individual businesses. I hoped you would be able to explain that, but if you're not paying it, then
Ask your accountant or call the Department of Revenue, and they'll tell you.
Department of Revenues have some very helpful people. I've had to talk to them a few
Call
times.
your state representative. He'll get you right through to the appropriate person.
Now, Sam, you're on the House Finance Committee, and that goes to your committee, I guess, next week, or to the House next week.
Right. Is this working? Yeah. You know, Senator Jack Johnson, he explains it so well. And again, I agree with what Jack said about this, the potential liability to the state. Some have estimated if it gets into the trial courts, it could cost the state up to $4 billion if we don't take action now. To be clear, most of it will go to, if it happens and they decide to settle with the state, we hope there's some way we can work out and on the House side, transparency, who is applying for this rebate. If we have given them tax credits or other incentives, that should be deducted from that amount. And also there should be a time limit how long they have to, apply for this rebate. But the vast majority, now not dollar-wise, but the vast majority of this are small businesses, okay? There's a few large businesses, but I think if we do transparency, we get ahead of this issue, we could actually save the state a lot of money that would actually go to trial attorneys and court costs and such like that. So that's what we're looking at. The House will come out with their version here pretty soon, and so we'll see where it goes.
Good information. I'm going to have to declare a Rule 13 on this next subject because I do have a personal interest here, but I am aggravated about potholes.
Sam Whitson. Everybody go to Sam Whitson on potholes.
Yeah, Sam's on the Transportation Committee. I used to think the subcommittees were kind of a demotion, but now I've figured out that if a bill doesn't make it through the subcommittee, it doesn't ever make it to the committee. And Sam's on the Transportation Subcommittee and the Transportation Committee in the House. So what can we do about the potholes, Sam?
Call your senator. No, seriously. Again, it's this time of year in the spring with the fall, freeze and thaw process. It does create the number of potholes. We have decreased over the years, and we have not kept up with the maintenance funds that we are generating for TDOT. A lot of it has to do with maintenance, deferred maintenance on the roads. I think we're spending more now on maintenance of roads than we are building roads, and that concerns me. When I ran on two things: build roads, build schools. And I feel like we should do more. We have the Transportation Modernization Act. We put more money into roads than we ever have in state history. We've given more to our local our county roads. I think we had $5 million just to Williamson County. Normally they get $1 million a year. So it is a project. They have private contractors out working. You try to work around the peak traffic hours, but remember, we still have the same number of lane miles in Tennessee that we had 60 years ago, but the population has gone up. The wear and tear on the roads, the number of trucks on the roads, it all has an impact. So that's a long answer, but if you need any more detailed answer, please call your senator.
So is it going to change? Are we going to see any changes as a result? I mean, I think the rainy day fund is a perfect opportunity to use the rainy day fund because it was weather related, right?
You got me there, Dave. Okay. No, but I'll try to do my best between now and November 5th. Okay.
Okay. Todd Warner, you're between here and Marshall County. I drive back and forth to Culleoka quite a bit, and last winter it got really bad, but it's been paved since then. But I mean, have you got any solutions to?
No, the only thing I want TDOT to do, my biggest complaint from Williamson County is the widening of Highway 31 in Spring Hill, and we did get that on the 10-year plan, and I'm hoping we get the interchange opened up pretty soon down there, and hoping that takes some traffic off of 31, and those folks down Spring Hill gives them a little bit of relief. I guess that would be the west side of town there on 31.
Hope of getting any more lanes built between here and Saturn Parkway?
I think that may be on the list. Sam Mike could talk a little bit more on that than I can, but I think it is on the list.
Well, I got to look at that, but what we really want to push for Williamson County, though, on the side is the southeast quadrant of Mac Hatcher, because if you do improve, and it's 9 years, it started at 10 on 31 coming from Spring Hill up to the target there at Mac Hatcher, but we really need, that will become a cul-de-sac if we don't improve the number of lanes on the southeast side of Mac Hatcher. But also another big project that really needs to be looked at, though, is the Moores Lane interchange on I-65. That was on the Improve Act, but as the TDOT commissioner told me, these are plans. They can change year to year based on funding and
Depending on the governor.
yeah, that too. And so anyway, it is a 10-year plan, but it is as Butch Healy said, what is planned and funded will be built. That's the change of philosophy for TDOT.
Well, when Billy took office, I believe the southeast quadrant of Mac Hatcher was on the 3-year plan, and it's not there anymore. So
again, it is
go,
a plan.
Go have a conversation with him. Anyway, that thanks for humoring me on that subject this morning. But
Always.
Representative Bulzo, you have been unusually active this session, and I think you've been busy with a flag bill that I think the Senate kind of put the brakes on, but library books, parental rights, baby Olivia, judicial oversight of the legislative rules. Take your pick. Tell us a little bit, bullet points here, what you're trying to accomplish, what you expect to accomplish, and how that's going to affect us here in Williamson County.
Sure, Dave, happy to. Let me add one to the list that wasn't on yours. This F&E tax, just so everyone will know, not everyone is actually on the same page with regard to that tax. I myself am not convinced that we've got a problem with the Commerce Clause, which is the underlying rationale to change our F&E tax. You know, the problem in Maryland had to do with the nature of their tax structure. They had a state tax and a county tax, and an in-state actor would only get credit on revenue earned outside the state for the portion of the state tax that was paid, not the county tax. Our structure is very different, and it doesn't violate the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the Constitution, unless it's found to have a disparate impact on interstate commerce. And I've actually had the privilege of litigating dormant Commerce Clause cases in federal court for the state of Tennessee. About 20 years ago, Governor Sundquist hired me and my firm to defend what was called Tennessee's optometry law when it was challenged by LensCrafters, Pearl Vision, Cole Vision, other national optical retailers as violating the dormant aspect of the Commerce Clause. And we won that case in federal district court. We won that case in the Sixth Circuit. We ultimately had the Supreme Court deny cert. So this is an issue that I have some background in, and I'm not convinced from my discussions with the governor's office yet that we actually have a dormant Commerce Clause problem that would lead to this wholesale change in our F&E tax. With regard to the second issue, Dave, the flag bill, I mean, it's not in any way dead. I mean, it's actually passed on the House floor. It's passed the State Education Committee, and it's simply waiting to be calendared for a vote on the Senate floor. So we expect it to pass, and it really needs to pass because it is part of the parental rights movement that we have in the General Assembly. Because I think all of us can agree that, you know, parents send their kids to school to learn, not to be indoctrinated with regard to a particular belief or set of values. And that was the genesis of that bill, and it received widespread support in the House. I think it's going to receive widespread support on the Senate floor. With regard to baby Olivia, and for those of you who do not know, if you go to babyolivia.com, you'll see an amazing computer-generated animation that's 3 minutes, 21 seconds in length that shows fetal development from the point of conception all the way through birth. And in Tennessee, we've got a statute, 49-6-1304, that deals with the issue of family life curriculum. And I sponsored a bill that simply provided that the Baby Olivia video or something similar to it that shows a high-definition ultrasound or a high-quality computer-generated animation showing fetal development from conception through birth be part of any family life curriculum. And once again, that passed in our House Education Committees. It passed on the Senate floor overwhelmingly, and it passed on Wednesday in the Senate Education Committee. So it will likely be on the Senate floor next week. And I think that's going to be to the benefit of all public school students across the state because it's 100% scientific and it's just a beautiful illustration of how life begins and certainly should form part of any family life curriculum. A third thing I think you mentioned, Dave, had to do with this issue regarding the subject matter jurisdiction of circuit, chancery, and inferior courts.
Right.
And there, you know, we've run into a bump in the road in the Senate. I mean, originally, many of you recall that when we had the special session in August, we had a court actually issue an injunction to our Speaker of the House against enforcement of one of our House rules that had to do with signs, which was a rule that was completely constitutional. It was consistent with the rules that govern the U.S. Congress, and our courts historically have held that the judiciary has no role to play in determining the rules that govern the House or the Senate. And courts have ruled that way because when you look at Article 1, Section 12 of our Constitution, Article 2, Section 12, it states specifically that each house shall determine its own rules. And in the Mayhew versus Wilder case, Judge Cantrell and the Middle Section Court of Appeals stated explicitly that issues that have to do with political questions are not the province of the judiciary. So I wrote a bill that simply said that under the powers that are given to the General Assembly under Article 6 of the Constitution, no circuit, chancery, or inferior court has jurisdiction to become involved in determination of questions challenging our rules. That bill passed the House. It got to the Senate Judiciary Committee and actually ended, I believe it was in a tie vote, it might have been 8-8, which under the Senate rules means it just kind of stays right there in the committee. It hasn't advanced out yet. And that's the summary of those three bills, Dave.
Let some of the other gentlemen weigh in. Now, Senator Hensley, I was in a meeting where you took a pretty interesting, I thought, position on the flag bill and why that was something you all felt was necessary. Could you weigh in on that a little bit?
Sure, and I'm sponsoring the flag bill in the Senate, so, and it has passed through the committee and is waiting to go to the floor. I'm sponsoring several bills Gino has, so some of the other bills dealing with parental rights and with appropriate books in libraries, but the flag bill, we discussed it in the committee. I completely agree. We send our children to school to learn to read, write, and do math, not to be indoctrinated by anybody's philosophy. So these pride flags on the teacher's desk and all, indoctrinating children in first grade, second grade, third grade, where they come home, ask their parents what that means. That's just not appropriate for the public schools. So we're trying to just, and this bill has several flags. People, our teachers can display in the schools, but just can't be indoctrinating students. So we are waiting for the bill to go to the floor.
You're also a medical doctor.
Yes.
You probably know a little bit more about the baby Olivia subject than most of us. Could you weigh in on that?
Well, this is a ultrasound video of showing a developing fetus in the womb, and we did pass that in the Education Committee this week. I'm not the sponsor of it; Senator Bowling is, and so that bill has passed the Senate Education Committee. We ended the Education Committee this week, actually, and our session is starting to wind down. Some of the committees are ending, but this is just a 3-minute video that we're just asking schools to show in their family life curriculum and in their family life studies in school, just showing the developing human fetus. The 3-minute video is very, very impressive, and I think it just shows how life develops. So I think it's very appropriate for our schools to show the video.
You're also in the Education Committee in the Senate, and I think you passed, or not sure whether the House or the Senate passed the 4th grade reading retention changes this week.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that, if you will.
Well, that's very important because 2 years ago we passed a 3rd grade retention law, we called it, because only about a third of our 3rd grade students are reading on grade level in the 3rd grade. So we passed some legislation setting up some steps for students to go through if they're not making adequate growth on their TCAP at the end of the 3rd grade. They could be held back in the 3rd grade. But we did set up some things that would help the students tutoring during the 3rd grade and summer school and after school help with their reading. So hopefully get those students reading on grade level. So we focused all that on the 3rd grade, which happened last year, and now this year we're finding a lot of those students have progressed from the 3rd grade. They've had the summer school, that they've had tutoring during the 3rd grade, but now when they got to the 4th grade, the law said that if they didn't make adequate progress on the TCAP at the end of the 4th grade, they could be held back in the 4th grade. So we didn't put any help with them in the 4th grade, tutoring or the summer school. So it was just a strict, if they didn't make adequate progress on that end of course TCAP in the 4th grade, they would be helped back in the fourth grade. So this year, we're seeing a lot of parents are concerned, teachers are concerned that the Department of Education is saying as many as 5,000 to 6,000 students across the state could be held back in the fourth grade. So we saw that as an issue, and we didn't have any way that, because it was a hard, fast law, if they didn't make adequate progress on that TCAP, they would be held back in the fourth grade. We did set up adequate progress for each student, was a individual thing, trying to measure how much progress that student needed to make between the fourth grade and the 10th grade for them to be reading on grade level. But we did pass a bill this week in the Education Committee. The prime sponsor was Senator Don White. I was a co-sponsor of the bill, but we did set up some other reading screeners during the fourth grade they could use. And if they didn't make adequate progress on that TCAP, they could convene a conference between the parent and the school officials and determine whether the child needed to be held back or not. If they didn't, then they could progress on to the fifth grade if they agreed to have a tutor during the fifth grade. So we don't think that we'll see many students being held back. But if the parent feels like their child needs to repeat the fourth grade, they certainly can. But we're trying to make it so that it's just not a hard, fast one test if they don't make adequate progress. With the conference between the parents and the school officials, the superintendent or principal, and I see the superintendent here today, so hopefully that's going to help with that fourth grade issue. And it passed the Senate Education Committee this week, should be on the floor, I would think, next week, and I would think would pass the House. I don't think it has yet, but
Does Kurt Hastings have it?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, it did move out of subcommittee this week in the House.
So we are trying to help, but we're just trying to put things in place to help with that third grade reading, and we're looking at starting even earlier, K through 2, and putting some of these summer schools tutoring in those grades so the students aren't behind when they get to the third grade. But education's so important. That's one of the biggest things that we do at the state level. It's the biggest cost to the state, that a topic at K through 12 and higher education is what the state spends the most money on. But we just want to have a educated workforce and help our students being prepared to move on. So hopefully that law will help with some of the angst for that fourth grade.
Representative Warner, you're on the Education Committee, I think 2 or 3 of the education subcommittees in the House, and you say that's moving through the House. What's your progress report there on that?
Yes, sir, Dave. It passed out of the subcommittee. Should be in the Education Administration full committee, and I don't see no reason that it wouldn't keep moving forward in the House. It's not our intent never to hold a child back, but at the same time, when we're sending children on that can't read and write, we're doing nobody a favor. So when you talk about the third grade a little bit, I think I seen the statistics where in Tennessee last year that there was only maybe 89 students across the state, if I'm correct on this, that were actually held back. That third grade retention bill, there's 9 different factors that can come into play to move that child on. So it's never our intention to try to do something to, we want the best for our children. I can promise you that, and we want to make sure they're on grade level.
I hate to move through these subjects so fast, but
I know the one you want to get to, so.
of that, and I'm wanting to leave some time for questions today. Maybe caught a little flack about that last month, so we're going to make sure we get through the discussion up here so we can hear from our audience and see how they feel. Jake McCowan, Representative, you've kind of escaped the spotlight here that I've seen here lately.
Just happy to be here, Dave.
What are you working? What are you working on?
Sure, and seriously, I am happy to be here, and it's always great to be at Policy Talks. I love it. I think it's great for the community. This year, I've kind of turned my focus a little bit towards crimes against kids and then child and human trafficking. Was proud to work with the Tennessee Faith and Freedom Coalition to get a bill passed that extends the statute. It extends the statute of limitations for victims of child and human trafficking. Currently, it's 15 years past their 18th birthday. We said civilly they should be able to go back. 15 years is not nearly enough, so we're doubling that to 30 years past their 18th birthday to go back and claim whatever restitution they can get from these horrible monsters that committed these atrocities towards them. Passed another resolution as well. It's moved through. It's passed in the House. It passed on the Senate unanimously on both houses, urging the state of Tennessee to work with surrounding states and AGs to kind of create a coalition to track this happening. We know it's not just happening in Tennessee, and many of the kids and women that are being trafficked, they're crossing state lines all across the Southeast. So the goal is to create a Southeastern coalition, a new SEC, to track this this data and hopefully put an end to it.
We've, of course, the media has been alive over the, what's it called, Education Freedom Jacket. Tell me what the name of the bill is.
Education Freedom Scholarship Act.
Freedom Scholarship Act. And there are some very strong feelings on both sides of this issue. As I mentioned last month, I think I can argue both sides pretty well because there's two sides of the story. If you would tell us in bullet points what the Senate and the governor have passed. I believe you passed something. No, not yet. I'm getting that mixed up with the F&E tax. But what does the Senate bill do, and how do you think that affects us?
Sure. Well, I think Dr. Hensley here did a great job talking about, as did some of my other colleagues, talking about our emphasis on education in the state. And, you know, you think about over the last, Governor Lee, this is his 5th year in office or 6th year or whatever it is, and it's certainly been a top priority for him. So I had my staff go back and pull for the last decade, what we've done relative to public education. And as Senator Hensley said, it is, the largest thing we spend money on when you add up everything relative to education. So the late former Lieutenant Governor John Wilder, he said the three main things the state is in the business, it's not everything, but the three main things: education, roads, and healthcare. And when you look at our budget and what we spend money on in terms of as a state, our 10 Care program, roads, Sam did a great job talking about that, and then obviously education. So we have increased spending on public education in the state of Tennessee by $3.46 billion over the last decade. And I think that's approaching about a 50% increase in 10 years. In recent years, we've focused a lot on third grade literacy. All of our education professionals out there will tell you that that's such a critical time in the development of a child. From K through 3, you learn to read. After that, you read to learn. And so if we are advancing kids from 3rd on to 4th, 5th, and 6th grade and they can't read, we are setting them up to fail. And so we have appropriated hundreds of millions of dollars to attack this literacy issue with a vengeance and make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that these kids can read at grade level before we advance them. And if we do advance them, we had a great conversation about that. If we advance them on to 4th grade and there's some question, we're going to provide tutoring, we're going to provide summer camps, and try to give our local school districts as many tools as we can to make sure they can read at grade level. So I'm very proud of everything we've done. We're not through. And last year we appropriated enough money to give our school teachers the largest pay increase they've ever received on a percentage basis. We passed legislation to make sure that in the next couple of years, the minimum starting salary for a teacher in the state of Tennessee is $50,000 a year to make us more competitive with some of the states around us. So we have done a lot relative to public education. The governor did introduce legislation. I'm very proud to be the sponsor of it, the Education Freedom Scholarship Act. It's a relatively small piece of the overall puzzle whenever it comes to education, but it's an important piece. In the 22-23 school year, we had 967,000 kids in public schools in Tennessee. The governor's proposing 20,000 scholarships to help kids who are zoned for a school that is not meeting their needs to be able to get that child into an alternative learning environment, be it a private school, be it a homeschool environment. That's 2%. That's 2% of the kids that are in schools in Tennessee. And I fully support that. We've appropriated enough money to pay for those scholarships. It'll be a $7,000 scholarship. That's the amount of money on average that the state appropriates to educate a child. If you average all of the districts across the state, we spend a lot more than that. The remainder of that money comes from local governments. Here in Williamson County, the state appropriation, I believe, is around $4,200, but yet we're spending $12,000 to $13,000 to educate a child. The rest of that money comes from local governments. We're not touching the local government. So now in other districts, it's the inverse. We might be appropriating a little bit more than the $7,000, but if you average it across the state, it's $7,000. So it's really relatively simple. 20,000 scholarships, 10,000 in the first year would be needs-based, up to 300% of federal poverty. The other would be unlimited, unrestricted, and that would be recurring, so that 20,000 scholarships would carry over. Obviously, if a child receives a scholarship, they're entitled to keep that scholarship. They get first priority moving forward. But I started the answer to that question talking about everything that we have done for public education in the last 10 years. And it is a lot, and we're not going to stop. We believe in public education. You can believe in public education, but also believe in school choice at the same time. And that's my position. And again, happy to have a lot of conversation about it. I don't think the utilization of these scholarships in Williamson County or Franklin Special is going to be significant at all. I think it'll be negligible. I think your fluctuation in ADM is probably going to be more than the number of people that would utilize this scholarship. But there are families in other parts of the state that don't have the resources to pay for an alternative education environment for their child that will be able to utilize this scholarship and perhaps put some other money with it or find another scholarship and be able to get their kids into the learning environment that is best for them. So I applaud the governor for bringing it forward, and I fully support it. We can talk about the differences between the House and the Senate version. I've pretty much explained the Senate version there. And it's to be seen where we end up, and that's another part of it. I don't think any of us can tell you where we're actually going to end up between the two versions, but I'm going to work very hard to make sure we get it passed.
Sam, give us a 30-second or 60-second synopsis on how the House version is going to be different.
Well, again, I'm not on the education committee. I have not really dealt with that. I've been dealing with some other issues, but you know, we don't. Jack's right. We don't know what the final bill will look like, the scale and scope of it, and so it's just to be seen. I look forward to the discussion. I had a chance. The governor called me over, and we had a frank discussion about the bill. And I would just ask the public, these are all friends of mine up here. We agree on so much, but sometimes we just have a disagreement on a policy, a major thing. And I just ask to be respectful to both sides of this issue, to these folks that are trying to make tough decisions for our state.
Let me add to that some. I am on the Education Committee and am fairly
We're
familiar
very tight on time, so.
with the House version and the Senate version. And Senate version does include being able to spend the money going to other public schools. That's a big difference between the Senate version and the House version. The House version does limit the growth of the program. It does add other things to the program, dealing with the evaluation of the teachers, extending that over 3 years, and testing in schools, doing away with some of the testing, adding some money to the teachers' insurance, increasing it from 45% the state pays up to 60%, changing some of the weights that students can draw down money from the state. So there are quite a bit of difference between the House and the Senate version. So we're just going to have to see what comes out at the end.
Dave, I've kind of been out front on this thing. I ran 4 years ago before I was redistricting into Williamson County, and I represented rural Marion County down along the Alabama line, Franklin County, Lincoln County. Then I had all of Marshall County, and it was a big, big topic then. We had a former rep that told the local school board there in Marshall County that he would not support vouchers. He went to Nashville, he done just the opposite, and it got him beat. And I'm totally against it. To me, it's an entitlement program. It's corporate welfare. And at the end of the day, and I know they say it won't take away from public schools, and maybe it don't on the front end, but at the end of the day, 95% of our students are gonna come from the public schools. And I think we should do the best job we can in our public schools. One problem I have, and I don't want to beat nobody up, it's been through 2 of my committees. I've asked the education commissioner several questions that she couldn't answer. It troubles me that we go outside the state to hire an education commissioner when we have plenty of people in this great state that could do the job, that share the values of the majority of Tennesseans. We got a man sitting right there
1 or 2 here in our audience.
that could do this job. And I struggle with that a little bit. But I was out front when I ran that I was against the voucher program. At some point in time, folks, don't think the state's going to give you money and not put some strings on it, okay? I'm sure there's plenty of these private schools who's going to think about this before they take this money, and they're going to say, hey, if we take this money, at some point in time, the state's going to get involved in our business.
Let me let everybody know for sure, this is the broadcast will stop at 9 o'clock sharp. But these gentlemen have always been gracious about sticking around and answering questions and having discussions after 9 o'clock. So don't get too excited if we don't get to your question this morning.
One last thing, Dave, before I stop, or I'll be glad to take any questions. I am for school choice. I think you ought to be able to take your child anywhere you want to take it. But I think it's not the place for the government to get involved in the private schools. And the homeschoolers, not one single homeschooler came to me and say, hey, vote for this bill. They don't want it.
Yeah. Our county school board and our Franklin Special School Board both have voted a resolution against this bill. And I like to say I can argue both sides of it. Jason Golden, but the best argument I've heard for the bill or against argument, I guess it is Williamson County gets about $4,000, $4,500 per student from the state of Tennessee. And it costs us about $10,000 or $11,000 a year to educate each of our kids, right? So every student that leaves the county or special district and goes somewhere else saves us $6,000. It sounds like to me, $6,000 or $7,000. Does that math not work?
On a per student basis, it might not necessarily work, because if one particular student leaves a class, we still need the teacher, we still need the support. So on an individual basis, it might not. On the aggregate, it's difficult to say. We really don't know how this might impact Williamson County schools. And I will tell you, our board is split on the issue, just like our legislative delegation is split. Our board voted 7-5 just this week to pass the resolution asking them not to do vouchers or an education savings account in Williamson County. But it was 7-5. I encourage folks to look at that debate that our board had. A lot of the detail of that came through in our work session to prepare for this month's meeting, and then of course at the board meeting as well. But ultimately, by a 7-5 vote, the board asked them not to do that in Williamson County.
Dr. David Snowden, anything to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Dave, and thanks for you guys, and thanks for the service. Our board did vote unanimously against the educational savings account. We do think that it will be detrimental to public schools, maybe not initially to a large extent, but we have been in opposition. We also, my question, if I may, is what is the fiscal note for the implementation of this voucher program? And also, what is the fiscal note for the investigation or the audit of these funds once they go to the publics or go to private schools and the parents?
I think in the House, of course, we got two different versions, and at the end of the day, I think this thing goes to conference committee. It gets worked out right at the end of the session, and we really don't get a true time to vet it. I hope that don't happen, but I think the House version is about 480 million, and I do stand to be corrected if I'm wrong there, but it is about a 480 million just for the program itself.
Sam Whitson, Finance Committee. Man.
Thank you, Dave. And Dr. Snowden, I did ask the Commissioner of Education that question during our budget hearings. I said, TennCare has an inspector general to investigate fraud. Anytime you start passing out government money, like when we had the COVID funds, the PPE money, or TennCare, TennCare has, like I said, an inspector general. And I asked the Commissioner, do they plan on having someone like this when you start talking about, I'm not talking about the 20,000, but I talk about as this program grows in the long term. I think fraud will be an issue, and I think it's something that the department, if it should pass, should be prepared for.
If I'm not mistaken, the TDOE's budget includes a request for 11 additional positions to administer this. That's what I have heard.
I'd just like to add that the governor's budget, I mean, the governor's proposal was about $144 million. The House's proposal with the insurance increase and those other things is about $450 million. And the Senate version, I think, is still about $140 million.
If I could, Dave, let me jump in and offer a few thoughts, because I do support the governor's proposal, but I think it's good to take a step back and to see how we got here. Because one of the things that we know is that we're all in favor of parental choice. And we are, because we love parents. Because to be a parent means to know what it's like to love another person more than you love yourself.
You've got a few children, I believe.
I'm sorry?
You've got a few
We've got a
children.
few. And the more power you can give to parents, the better, because they know what's best for their children. And education, of course, involves more than academic formation. It's academic formation, it's moral formation, it's spiritual formation. No one does academic formation better than Williamson County Schools. You know, last year we had an average of 24.7 on the ACT against a state average of 19. Just think about that. We're about 6 points on average ahead of the entire state. But obviously, when you get into moral and spiritual formation, you get into a different issue. And that's actually what led to that Supreme Court decision back in 1962, Engel versus Vitale, that ruled that you can't have prayer in schools. And that's why we have, I think, so much of this debate, because right now in our public schools, we can do academic formation, but we can't do moral or spiritual formation. Some parents are happy to do moral and spiritual formation at home, so they send their kids to a public school. Others like to send their kids to public schools and do and do moral and spiritual formation at Sunday school. Still, other parents, they'd like to have the option of having all three combined, where you can have academic, moral, and spiritual formation occurring at the same time. And in June of 2022, I think it was on June the 20th, we had our Supreme Court decision in Carson versus Macon. And that was a 6-3 majority written by Chief Justice John Roberts, who said it's perfectly constitutional to have a state give money to parents, or at least to accredit them with money, that they can use to put kids in private schools to accomplish religious formation. And so we've got all these great options. And my position is that we ought to empower parents. If you want to use the money that's allocated to a student under the TISA formula to go to your local public school, that's great. If you're in a county and you want to send your kid to another school in that same county or that same LEA, you can do that. We've got a statute that provides for that. If you want to take your TISA funds and educate your child in a private or a Christian school, you can do that. And I think we should do something for the homeschoolers, although it's not currently in the House bill. So I think when you to the principle of parental choice, I think we're all on the same page. It just becomes a question of how to implement that. And I think the balance that the governor has struck in his bill is one that we ought to carry forward with.
I think we'll stay tuned, and I'd love to talk about the conference committee a little bit here, but I want to give our audience a chance to ask a few questions if you've got them. Who was first?
Ladies first, ladies first, ladies first.
I'm not supposed to say this, but she's cuter than you are. But no, go ahead. Identify yourself.
My name is Catherine Rickmeyer, and obviously there's opinions on both sides. We already have an ESA pilot program going on right now. We just completed the first year, and I believe, to quote the education commissioner, the testing results were, quote, nothing to write home about. So my question is, why would we expand a program that the results, the data says is not going well, if we can just bring it back to that?
Let me at least start to answer that question, Catherine. I think that's the wrong data point to look at, because kids are coming from an environment where they were being taught in a way that helped them perform well on a TCAT, and the schools that they've gone to have a different academic structure completely. The key stat, when you look at the ESA program, is that 95% of the parents in that program by survey are satisfied or beyond satisfied with it. So it shows that parents are happy having a structure where the money follows the child and the parent gets to decide what school the child goes to, which is a paradigm that we've had for the last 20 years in Tennessee in higher education, called the Hope Scholarship, where our qualifying high school graduates can take Hope Scholarship dollars and go to a public college or university in Tennessee or to a private one. And neither with the ESA program or in the Hope Scholarship program have we had a process where the private schools are being corrupted somehow by government influence, or the public institutions are being destabilized. It hasn't happened in 20 years. At the higher education level, there's no reason to think that would happen if we expand ESA across all 95 counties.
Hi, my name is Jared Sullivan. I went to Williamson County Schools almost all the way through. I was student body president at Franklin High School in 2009. So my question is, in Tennessee, if you're a family of four that makes $45,000 a year, does not qualify for free lunch at school. Their kid doesn't, right? But under this voucher bill, a family that earns $400,000 a year, you're willing to give them $7,000 each to go to private school. I would just appreciate how you would justify that. Because to me, that does not seem like an equitable deal.
Well, this voucher program starts out with those income limits, but after the first year, there would be no income limits on it. Well, that's just a policy. At first, the governor's proposal does propose 20,000 scholarships the first year. 10,000 would be income-based, and then 10,000 of those just open to the public. So it would be helping all those families that chose, whether they were low income or they were higher income, they could benefit from the program.
So you're okay if you're okay not giving school lunch to a family that's scraping by on $45,000 a year, but you're okay giving $7,000 to a family that makes per kid that makes $400,000 a year. That seems right to you.
Well, it's different issues of funding. I mean, the school lunch programs, certain children qualify for the free or reduced lunch program according to the income. A lot of schools, all of the students qualify, and some of them, a high percentage of them qualify, and some of them don't. But the school lunch program is certainly a different issue.
Different issue, but it's still money, right? It's still how are we allocating our resources to benefit the public, right?
Yes, but most of the school lunch programs comes from the federal government. A lot of the funding for the school lunches comes from the federal government. That's part of the money that schools get from we get about $1.2 billion from the federal government. About $500 million of that is to help pay for the school lunch program. So many of those students do qualify for the lunch program.
One follow-up, if I could, Dave, with what we were talking about. And when we talk about school choice, that also involves, does the state have a choice in which schools receive this money? We hope it's Christian schools, but there will be other schools applying for this. And when I asked the Commissioner of Education, will there be some schools or programs not eligible for this? At this time, they cannot answer that. So think about that with public funds going to some programs that you have serious concerns about and their philosophy that they're teaching.
If I could comment on that, Dave, we've got a First Amendment that starts out by saying, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So you can bet that there will be schools other than Christian schools to which parents will elect to send their children. That's a good thing, not a bad thing, because in this country, we have freedom of religion. It's the very first sentence of our First Amendment.
Right, and I agree with you, but then there would be public pushback on this, and it just could end up in court, and that's what I'm concerned about.
Gentlemen, by the way, I really appreciate you guys trying to work it out, and I love the way it's worked back from the House and the Senate. And I believe, yeah, Scott Nelson, I live in Brentwood, been here 31 years. I believe you all are Republicans, correctly? You all are Republicans. And so I believe, isn't this a part of our platform, our national platform? And so, number one. And number two, I think anytime that you can further the ball of this and get it further down, what we saw in that alpha test was absolutely amazing, how it changed lives of all different people of different incomes. And it was really a fair choice program. It was a scholarship. It was fantastic. What does this define you as if you're against it? As a rhino? Because I'm amazed that you would come so strongly against something that really helps so many and gives them a choice and helps them. But I think between all of you, you have the power to work it out where we can make this work, and it's not some kind of government program. The way I remember at the beginning when we first talked about it and saw the alpha test was it's a scholarship. So I think you're really working out to the right direction. But I'm a little concerned that you're all Republicans and someone says strongly, I've been against this, by gosh, since the very beginning, because our party is for that.
Todd?
Am I on? Yeah. I just, in the 92nd district that I represent, first of all, there's not a private school. So, you know, travel time. The homeschoolers are not in the bill, sir. They're not in the bill. They've been written out, and they was asked to be written out of the bill, or they would have been left in. Ask Speaker Sexton. I promise you, he's had many calls, and that's the reason they've been taken out of the bill. Again, my opinion is, I'm for school choice. I'm just not for the government paying for everything. You know, these schools are for-profit schools. Are we going to start subsidizing other businesses that may offer kids after-school program or a school that teaches swimming lessons on Saturday? Are we going to pay them? You know, I mean, I just don't get it. I mean,
Gentlemen, we're going to have to suspend the conversation momentarily and close the show out because we're out of time. But I really appreciate, you can't imagine how much we appreciate you being here, first of all, and taking time to come down here and explain so many of these things that seem so one-sided. And there's really two sides to a lot of these issues, and we like to hear both of them. So we appreciate the time y'all take to be here with us, and we appreciate the audience that comes and ask a few hard questions occasionally. But we look forward to coming back next month and continuing this conversation. Just want to thank everyone again for being here. It's it wouldn't be any good if we, of course, didn't have an audience, and we appreciate you participating. Just can't thank Dr. Lampley and the Columbia State staff enough for making this facility available. It's beautiful. Got a new building down here that I think we'll be glad to gather a group of you and take you for a tour after this meeting this morning. If you'd like to, just meet out in the lobby and take a tour of that new building. But thank you, Dr. Lampley, for all y'all do. Mary Beth, Bob, wherever you are, Bob. And Creed Henderson and his staff at WCTV. If you've watched the videos, they make us look professional. Sometimes that's hard, but we make it difficult for them. But we appreciate that. Tom Lawrence and WAKM getting us on the air with WAKM. Thank you, Tom. And Williamson Herald's a great partner. Sarah White writes some great articles. We've got her replacement here this morning somewhere. And I appreciate all the work they do. There he is. And I've already forgotten your name again. It takes me about John. Thank you, John. But we appreciate the partnership we have with the Herald to get the word out about these and do a wrap. We'd be remiss if we didn't thank the local McDonald's franchisee, the Lions Leadership Group. McDonald's coffee every morning, every time we meet here at 7:30, and that takes a lot of work on Terry's part, and we appreciate all she does. Financial support coming from Vanderbilt University through Lynn Maddox and Christine Bradley. We appreciate that. And AT&T, does Dennis Wagner have a replacement yet? Okay. Dennis Wagner retired. He's been here for years, and but AT&T has been a supporter. Matt and the Williamson Inc. staff, it takes a village, and Kel does the quarterback on this event, and we appreciate Kel and Jenna and Nancy Conway for a few behind-the-scenes tips. And I think I covered everybody, didn't I? I hope so. We will be back on April 26th. We hope you'll be back. I wish we had time to talk about conference committees and hospital certificates of need. A lot of things going on behind the scenes that these gentlemen are doing we never hear about. So pat them on the back, thank them for their service, and come back and see us next month. Thank you.